Since 1974, EasyMix has helped home handymen as well as tradesmen and women complete landscaping projects conveniently and effectively. From the early days, they've armed householders with quality products and useful step-by-step information to make even the hardest jobs seem simple. EasyMix strive to make your home project more convenient with a full do-it-yourself product range, so you can now tackle most jobs, from laying a simple slab or concreting a post to rendering, tiling and of course bricking up a U-Butte letterbox, all with confidence. Just remember to have a go, enjoy the experience and do it easier with EasyMix.
G'day, I'm Chris Parsons. Today we're going to build a rendered letterbox suitable for any home whatsoever. Now, if you're watching those do-it-yourself videos or those backyard renovation shows, the jobs they complete may seem a little bit overwhelming to say the least. You might think you might have to be a registered tradie or a very handy guy to get the job done. So let me say right at the outset, I'm not very handy. I have very little building experience. So basically, if I can do it, you can definitely do it. Now, the job itself is broken up into 4 distinct stages. Firstly, framework, brickwork, rendering and tile. Now, for the first stage of framework, here's what you'll need. Plenty of products on the market, but none make it easier than EasyMix concrete. Right, let's get started. Right, first stage of framework, here's what you'll need. Some EasyMix sand, 4 bits of timber for your boxing, length dependent on how big you want your slab to be, 2 metal pegs or wooden pegs, doesn't really matter, your EasyMix concrete, some water, wheelbarrow, shovel, screed and a float. Right, let's get started. Lay down your EasyMix sand as a base. Now, once you put in your boxing, this is how big I want my slab to be. The reason we have the sand is we don't want any concrete seeping out the sides, so we can easily just push the sand up to the sides, lose no concrete. Now, one little tip is working from front to back, it doesn't really matter, it's just a personal preference. Try and get one side probably about a centimetre higher than the other. The reason for this is you don't want the water pooling in the middle, it'll just run off right at the side. Now, once you've got your sand base in place, got your boxing level, chuck in a couple of wooden pegs or metal pegs. We've got a couple of bits of Rio bar we've thrown in. Now, you do this just to keep your boxing in place. Once done that and you're happy, we're ready to mix the concrete. Right, now we're going to mix the concrete. For this, you need a wheelbarrow, shovel, 30 kilo bag of EasyMix concrete. Now, quick little tip for you. Before you throw anything heavy into a wheelbarrow, just throw your toe onto the leg of the wheelbarrow. So when you throw anything heavy in, it doesn't flip over. It happened to me the other day. It's the only reason I'm telling you this. It fell over, everyone laughed at me. You don't need that, that's why I'm telling you. Now, and if you're anything like me, it can be very confusing on how much concrete you need for the amount of water for the job that you're doing. Luckily, the EasyMix gang have made it very, very easy for you. As you can see from the back of the bag, we have a very well set out coverage table, some very easy to follow mixing directions, which makes it very, very easy indeed. Takes out the confusion. Right, for this job we need a 30 kilo bag of EasyMix concrete and 3.5 litres of water, which takes us to the next step, cracking open our bag. Bit of fun. But, handy tip, when you're cracking open your bag, you don't want to use a flat edge. Use a corner because you want to rip that bag open from side to side. Right, once that's done, pick it up from the middle so the bag will split open, get all the concrete out very easily. There we go. And Bob's your mother's uncle. Now the concrete's in the wheelbarrow, here's one thing that's very important. Make sure the water comes to the concrete, not the concrete to the water. First things first, before we do this, get into your head that this is kind of like making a pizza base. So we want to make a well, just like you would with a pizza. Just grab the flat edge of your shovel, just pull to the side. Make a nice little hole for your water. That done, grab your bucket, my little fire engine red bucket here, and just pour that in the middle. Lovely. It's important not to use your hands too much because this will burn. All right, grab your shovel. What we want to do is just turn the dry concrete into the water. Right, when you're satisfied with that, we need to knead it just like we would our pizza dough. Right, I'm pretty happy with that. Now once you've finished your mixing, a good visual test of finding out whether you've got a good consistency is when you put in your shovel into the concrete and it just runs freely off the shovel. That's nice and moist, easy to pour in. Right, and when you pour in, I don't mind saying, you want to use your shovel to throw it in. Don't put it in from the barrow, goes everywhere. Learned that the hard way. Right, let's do it. Now, what you want to go for when you're shoveling it in, you want to get about 2 mil higher than your boxing. Just makes it easy to screed off. When you do put it in, just get the flat edge of your blade, put it into your concrete, helps to level it out. Right, now that you're pretty happy you've got your concrete spread quite evenly throughout your boxing, now we start the screeding. Now if you're anything like me until long ago, you're going to ask yourself the question, what is a screed? A screed is quite simply something to level something out with. Right, so we want to keep this as level as humanly possible before we lay down a brickwork. Now, if you don't want to spend your money on a metal one, just get yourself a big bit of wood, but it's important to make sure that it's wider, your screed is wider than the actual width of the boxing. Now, what we want to do is we want to make the concrete as strong as humanly possible. Now to do so, we're just going to do this basically. Just bang with good contact on either side of your screed on the sides of the wood. Basically this is vibrating the concrete down so it gets it nice and strong. Compresses it down till we get a really great consistency. Just back and forward, you might get a little bit of splashback, don't worry about that. The most important thing is to get your concrete strong. Right, I'm pretty happy with that. Now we start the leveling. Now, there's a bit of a technique to this, but it's not too hard. Grab your screed on either side, and you want to go on a sawing motion, basically. So with nice contact on your left and right hand side, pushing down, and nice and slowly, just saw back and forth. This will get your concrete nice and level. Now we've got a good consistency in our concrete and we're happy with our screeding, we basically want, see how there's plenty of moisture on here? We want that water to take up. If we don't let that water take up, when we go to float, it's just going to dig holes in the concrete. So we want that to dry just a little bit more so we get a great consistency. Now for this job, it's going to take about half an hour, which, happy days, means I get to have some lunch. Right, now that the water's been taken up, we're ready to trowel. Now the reason we do trowel is because besides getting it nice and flat and even, we really want to bring the cement in the concrete to the surface. Now the concrete's made of two parts, cement being the powder and rocks. So if you bring that powder to the surface, brings those rocks together, binds it, makes it nice and consistent, nice and strong. That's exactly what we want. Now there's not too much of a technique to your trowel. By the way, I've got a nice bright yellow one. You can get a pink one, totally up to you. Basically just want some nice even pressure. And just work that concrete around. If you come across a nice little air hole like we've got here, just go around the circles, fill that up, and brush over. Right, I'm pretty happy with that. So we're going to need a day for that to cure, so we'll come back tomorrow and lay the brickwork. Welcome back. Well, here's what we've done so far. We've found out exactly where we want to put our rendered letterbox. Put in our boxwork, thrown in the concrete, screed it off, floated it off, waited for it to cure for a day. Now, ready for our brickwork. Right, now that you've taken off your boxing, your slab, it's cured, it's dried, you're ready for the brickwork. Now here's what you're going to need for the brickwork. Firstly, your good old brick. Now I've got seconds or commons. This is a discontinued line, so because you're going to render it, it doesn't really matter the quality on them. Also, you're going to save yourself a great deal of cash. And also, I need about 74 bricks. Always add about 10% on for damages. So get yourself about 80. Right, Mortar, level, the good old letterbox, of course, trowel, square, pencil for your set out. Right, let's talk set out. When you're working with brickwork, economy of movement is absolutely key. As you can see, both my mortar boards situated either side, they're up on bricks, so I don't have to bend my back too far. Also, none of my workload is more than 2 feet away, so I never have to step anywhere, so I make it as easy as possible on myself. In the hot sun, that's very good. Right, now it's time to do your dry set out. Now it's very important to get your set out right before you mix your mortar. Now, I know that my letterbox is 1 brick in width. I want to allow for about half a brick either side, which means I want to have 2 bricks at the front. Grab your 2 bricks. Try and get it as parallel as you possibly can to the front. And always allow for about a 10mm joint. So 2 at the front, 1 each on the side. Again, look for your 10mm joint, and then your lone brick at the back. Get your leading edge. First we need to square it up. And if you've got a rusty old square like I do, you can't really tell how far away 10mm is. Use your setting out pencil. Good little visual aid. Again, trusty old Mr. Pencil. Right, next step. Pencil out. Right. Take your bricks away. It's time to make some mud. All right. Now once you mix up your mortar, that's a good batch too. Look at that. Nice and creamy. Good enough to eat. Righto. You're gonna chuck a couple of shovel loads onto your mortar board. Now this mortar board's been in the hot sun for a few hours, so it's really, really hot. It's gonna suck the moisture right out of your mortar. We don't want that. So you wanna just throw a little bit of water just on your mortar board. Just wet that up. So ready to trowel that first course. Right, now that you put all the water onto your mortar board, now it's time to work the mortar. What do I mean by this? And before you do so, take the pressure off your back. Just put one hand on your knee, make it nice and comfortable. Right, so just want to grab your mortar and just work it into the middle. Just like that. Also, it's giving you a little bit of practice on the method of working the trowel. Now, as you can see, I'm not that good at it, but with a little bit of practice, you can be quite good. It's like anything. If you're trying to learn how to play a guitar, practice at it, you get better. It's the same with this. There's a real technique to it. It doesn't stop you from doing it yourself. Right, let's lay some brick. And just run that down here. Grab your brick. Make sure he's nice and square. And then just tap him down. Sorry about the mess, you can clean that up later. All right, now we want a butter. So what you want to do is get like a cricket ball size, work it to the back of your trowel, just put it on the front, pretty much about that. Put him end to end. Again, make sure he's nice and straight. Scrape that off and tap him down. Right, that's your first 2 bricks laid. You want to make sure that's level. Yep, spot on. Again, cut up enough cement for a brick. Get on your trowel, tip down, turn it, and across. Up in your trowel, and just drag it through the center there. Get a brick again, get about a cricket ball size, work that to the back, push that on, tap it in, and we do it again. We need to put this in place, chuck a little bit of mortar on there like that. Get your level out once again. That's our first course. Repeat. Rack 'em and stack 'em. Almost finished the last course, which is the header course. Now, with the header course, we've just arranged the brick a little bit more differently. We've exposed the holes here, it gives us a little bit more height. That height's really important because it makes the whole letterbox look a little bit more symmetrical. Now, what's important about this, we need to fill up these holes. It just makes it a little bit more easy to render. Now, just grab a little bit of mortar on the side there and just flick it in. Just want to fill up those holes. There we go. Now we just got to butter one side. Finally, done. All right. Once that's done, just to pretty it up, just grab an ordinary household brush, just on a 45-degree angle, not too hard because it's still quite wet. Just brush off the excess mortar, just to make it a little bit easier to render. There we go, just like I bought one. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. All right, basically we leave that, come back tomorrow, start the rendering. For those who've just joined us, here's our project. We're making a rendered letterbox suitable for any home whatsoever. Now we've laid our slab, we've laid our brickwork, we've mortared the brickwork, laid our courses and the header course. Now, we're ready to render. Right, before we render, because we just can't jump straight into it, we need to prep the area. Okay, so what we do first is grab a bolster or a scraper, and we need to get rid of any of these little extra bits of cement which have accrued. We call them snot, technical term. And you just scrape those off. The reason we're doing this is we need to get the surface as flat and as level as possible. Makes it much more easy to render. Right, once you're happy, grab yourself an old brush and just dust it off. Once the area is clean, now you've got to masking tape up the areas you don't want to render, which is your letterbox and your slab. But before you do so, you need to clean these areas down or else your masking tape will not stick to it. So again, grab your bolster or your scraper. Just get these little bits of cement off. Again, dust that off. And the same with the slab. Once that dusted off, masking tape. Now try and get yourself long life, high quality masking tape, not just your usual household quality masking tape, because this stuff is UV resistant, which means this has been sitting in a hot sun for a long time, it won't stick to it. I could leave this on for 2 weeks and it'll be fine. Also, it's waterproof and it's very durable, so you won't scrape through it. Masking tape up these areas. Right, now that we've prepped the area and we've put on the masking tape, we're ready for the beading. And this, my friends, is your beading. Now the purpose of the beading is twofold, very important indeed. As you can see, it gives you a nice straight edge. Also in rendering, it gives you something to work up to. Now, when you're measuring your beading, here's something you've got to think about. You need a 2mm gap at your base here because your slab can swell, okay? And if it does swell, it can pop your beading off, wreck all your handiwork. Now, the most important thing with beading, when you're putting it on, we don't want it to overlap. If I just cut that there, see how there's plenty of plastic there? That means the render won't stick on properly. We're going to see a lot of plastic. not a very good job. So what we really need to do is miter it. Now it doesn't need to be as pretty as mitering a timber work, but miter all the same. Now to cut it, just get any old tin snips. Twist it, and it's off. So now, we're ready to glue. Throw on your liquid nails like so. Put on nice and thick. So you want that to spread out over a good sized surface area. Righto. Line him up nice and level. Squeeze him on and take it off. Leave that for about 10 minutes. Keep on gluing. One little tip though, to spread your glue out evenly, just give a little wiggle up the brickwork like that. Spreads it out nice and evenly. And again, take it off and leave for 10 minutes. Lovely, had my coffee and these are about ready to go on. Now that should stick almost immediately. Press it down nice and firmly and evenly. Once you've stuck them on and you're happy, grab your scraper, or in my case the bolster, and again, you want to scrape off little bits of snot, which what you like to call them, off your beads. Now, an ideal situation is, as you can see, there's plenty of space in between the triangles here. That means your render's got something to stick to. It can't stick to plastic. So if you've got plenty of glue in your hole here, then your render won't stick in very well. So just scrape off any excess. Lovely. Now all your bits are stuck down, you're happy? It's render time. Right, now it's time to render. Now again, ratios of water to render or mortar, as you can see on the back of your bag. First things first, always take your render to your water. I've got 4.5 litres of water to a bag of render. Pop that in your mixing bucket. Now, if you're not confident with your rendering, you might want to just do up half a bag, otherwise it'll go off before you're ready. Because if you do up a bag and you are quite confident, if you need the water, you can just add it to it. All right. Easiest way to open, put your hand in the valve and just rip it up. Once that's done, grab your spiral mixer. This is what we're going to use to mix the render and the water. You can pick these up from any hardware store between 10 and 30 bucks. They're quite cheap. Pop that in your bucket, because then what we're going to do is grab your easy render, just put it comfortably on your knee, and we want to just ease some out and mix at the same time. Just nice and slow, you don't want your powder to go everywhere. This may seem a little bit like rubbing your belly and tapping your head at the same time, but it's really not that hard. It's a little messy. There we go. This should take about 2 to 3 minutes to mix completely. By the end, we want a nice smooth consistency, quite moist. All right. Couple little spins, little tap, and we're done. That's the kind of consistency we want. All right, now ready to render.
Right, now we're ready to render. Now, just like brickwork, there's a bit of a technique to rendering, so you can do it one of two ways, depending on your ability. First one, you can put it on one thick coat, or if you're not as good at it, put it in 2 skim coats, which is what I'm going to do. Now, my friend Derek, he's an absolute Jedi with the trowel on the hawk board, so he's going to show us how to put on one thick coat. Derek.
There are a lot of techniques and tips involved with solid plastering. Just to give you a couple of the basics, the most important thing is being able to get the render off the hawk and onto the trowel.
Hawkboard trowel.
Hawkboard trowel, okay. The technique is like clutch control in a car. So you can't move one without the other, otherwise the render will end up on the floor.
Right.
So the technique is simply putting the trowel on the hook and moving them both together to get a big wad of render in the middle of your trowel. Okay, this is something worth practicing, and I would recommend that anybody that's going to render a wall should practice this for a good half an hour before they start.
Yeah.
Just getting the technique right.
So why do we need to do that?
Okay, the idea is, I'm going to take a little bit of render off the hawk. The idea is that as a novice, what you want to aim for is render on your trowel with about 20 millimeters each side left without render. So by doing this technique, we're creating a sausage effect, getting longer and longer as we do it. Now currently that's too long, and if we were to push that render onto the wall, all the render would spew off the end of the trowels and onto the floor. Okay, so what we then do is turn the angle of our hand around the other way and create a dob on the hawk, and then we'll do that technique again until we end up with approximately 20 mil either side of the trowel.
So when you apply that even pressure, it'll come right to the edges.
It'll come off to the edges of the trowel.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Now I'll have a go at putting this on the wall, see if I am actually a Jedi with a trowel. What we do is damp the brickwork down first. What that does is it hydrates the wall, gets water into it, so when you apply your render, the render doesn't dry too quickly. And if you've got a bit more time to work with the render, you'll be able to do a better job with the finished article.
Because the hot brickwork wants to suck the water out of your render.
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah. And what we do is let the free water go from the wall. When I say free water, if you can physically get water on the back of your hand or on your hand somewhere, then you should just leave it for a minute or so.
Yep.
Once the water's gone and the shine's gone off the wall, then it's ready to render.
Right. Okay.
Now you can do that process on a small area with a brush, just any old household brush or broom. If you've got a bigger area, you could use a hose and give it a light spray with a hose.
Yep. Okay. So I can see from here, Derek, you're starting off almost parallel to the slab, and then you're slowly giving it angle.
That's right.
To the top, so you can get that even pressure down. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. Yeah. So just to try and show exactly what you said there, Chris, which was start with your trowel slightly accentuated, but that way, and then gently ease the render off the trowel by changing the angle of the trowel as you're going up the wall.
Are you using the bead to keep it level?
The corner bead is exactly for that. And I push my trowel, put a nice bit of pressure on the bead, and that guarantees that it's nice and flat, at least here and here, and the rest will be where my eye comes in to make sure I've got it just right.
Right, like I said, there are two different ways to render. The first one being the application of the thick coat, and the second, the two quick skim coats, which is what I'm going to do. Now, the reason why the thick coat is so hard to do, and it's why we've got Derek to show you, is that once you've got the beading, which is 3 mil from the brickwork, and you add the glue, you're looking at anywhere between 3 to 7 mil of render you've got to apply evenly over the brickwork. Now, with that experience, that can be quite difficult. A little bit difficult for me. So I'm going to show you how a novice would do it, which is the skim coat. Get our hawkboard and our scoop. Now we only need just a thin bit of render. All I really need to worry about in the two thin coats is to apply 2 mil onto my brickwork and only go up to about really here. Otherwise we've got nothing to add the render on our second coat. So as long as it's nice and straight and it's a relatively even grain, then we're fine. By the way, don't be too critical on having 20 mil either side of your trowel. As long as you've got half your trowel full, that's fine. With practice, the technique will come. By the way, if you're finding the renders a little bit hard to work, just add a little bit of water as you go. You basically want the consistency to be like chocolate mousse. Sweet, happy with that. Right, so that's my first coat. You basically want it to look, well, when it's dry, if you leave it overnight for 4 hours, if you can't wait, it should look nice and white. But what I'm saying is, you want it nice and level, as far as your eye can tell, and you haven't covered this completely, which means your render's got something to stick to when you apply your second coat. Once you've applied your second coat, you float it and finish it off. We're on the home straight. So one of the hardest things about rendering, besides the technique itself, is wondering how much render you've actually put on. Sometimes you might have put on way too much than you actually needed. Before you put on your second coat, the best way to gauge if you put on too much, just get a level or a nice straight edge, put it along the edges and just run it down. You should have a nice gap in between your straight edge and your first coat. If you do, you've got a 2 or 3 mil, then beautiful, you've got enough render to chuck on another coat. If you've chucked on too much, just scrape it off. All right, ready for the second coat. Right, once your second coat is nice and dry, we're ready to screed. Now, screeding basically takes off any excess render and you want to shave it off. So just apply your screed to both beads. See, we've got plenty of render there. You want to take it all off in one go, so it's just a shaving motion like that. Even after screeding, you might have a few uneven surfaces. It might look level, but to give it a nice smooth finish, we float. Now, what we want to do is add some nice even pressure. Work from left to right, top to bottom. If you find your render's getting a little bit hard to work, you just need to add a little bit of moisture. To do so, just get a brush, just flick a little bit of water on it. We want to blend all these uneven surfaces through. All right, once that's done, we just need to sponge it. Just get a sponge, only slightly damp. And what we want to do is just some light pressure, just rub over where you floated. See, that's really bringing out the grain. Gives it a nice smooth finish, so we're ready to paint. But we're gonna have to leave that about 2 to 3 days before it's ready to paint. And also that render is gonna take a lot of moisture out. Once it starts to go a little bit white and patchy, you need to add moisture. You'll need to do so for probably about morning and night for the next 2 to 3 days. You can use a hose, damp cloth, or just a little bit of water on a brush like so. Once that's done, and it's all dry, we're ready to paint. Well, if you're new to our little video, this is the rendered letterbox. Here's what we've done so far. We've laid our slab, we've laid out our bricks, we've mortared the bricks, laid all our courses, we've rendered it, screeded it, floated it, we've painted it, and now to come home like a freight train to give a little bit of pizzazz, we're going to put on some mosaic tiles. Now when you buy a box of tiles, when you take them out, you usually got a little bit of paper at the backing here. Amateur night, and I've done it before, if you get the papers on, make sure you take that off. All right. I'm going to need about 2 rows here and maybe just 1 for the back. So take out your paper and chuck the box on the ground. Right, firstly, and do like all trades do, put your pencil in your mouth. It doesn't help me much, so I'm just going to chuck it here. All right, lay out the row you're going to cut first, edge to edge, and then throw out your other sheet on top. Now, to leave enough room for a join, on an angle, just run the pencil along here. That done. Take that away. Leave enough room for a join just here, make sure it's nice and straight. And as you can see here, we know exactly where to cut. Now we don't need these extra 2 rows, so we're going to get rid of them by cutting them off. Right, just cut along the spine here with a small razor blade. Now that should be exactly what we need. All right, measure out the back. Now, excuse me, I'm going to go and get these cut. Alrighty, once all my tiles are cut, Ready to mix my adhesive and glue them on. Right, now once you've cut your tile, you need to mix your adhesive. I've got my Easy Tile adhesive here. Now my ratio, it's about a 4.5 kilo job. I've got a litre of water. The ratio for whatever job you've got, easily set out on the back. So again, important to take your powder to your water. Add it in slowly and use your spiral mixer. So just throw on a little bit of the Easy Tile adhesive to start with, just in your water. What we're looking for in the end is consistency of like toothpaste. Put your feet either side of your bucket so it doesn't run away with you. All right, now we're ready to put down our adhesive. Now for this you're gonna need a trowel and a notch trowel. You can tell it's a notch trowel because it's got notches. Anyway, you can do this one of two ways. You can get a little scoop and throw it on your notch trowel, or you can get a scoop and throw it in the middle of your letterbox. Depends on what you're more comfortable with. I'm gonna give this a go. Get a good dollop and just run that along the length of your trowel. And then try and work from the edges in, edges in, edges in, edges in, so you're not pushing adhesive off the sides. Get about a 45-degree angle. Some nice even pressure. Smooth that along. Now unlike the render, where you bring the angle progressively down, you want to keep a 45-degree angle all the way. Nice and even and firm. Beautiful. All right, and we throw down our tiles. We're so close. Now, before you put your tiles on, you don't want to just plop it on. You're gonna make a lot of hard work for yourself. Just hang it over the edge of the little, and just pull it in. That's nice and straight. You could even use your float just to push down on that so you get it nice and even. It's important to get some nice even pressure over your tiles. Alrighty, now as a piece de resistance, we're going to throw a little bit of a pole in the ground, throw a light on top, just as a feature to our lovely mosaic rendered letterbox. Now, to do this, dig a nice little hole, and we're going to use some rapid set concrete. Now the beauty of this is that it's a dry set, which means you don't need to mix it in a wheelbarrow or a concrete mixer. So all we need to do is literally throw a little bit of our water in the hole, throw in some of our rapid set concrete. Now, before too long, you'll actually feel this setting. With the rapid set concrete, this will take initially about 15 minutes. Yeah, you can see that's standing on its own now. Beautiful. That's set enough that I can actually put on my light now. Hey, isn't that pretty? And there you have it, a rendered mosaic tile letterbox built from scratch with the lovely feature of the light pole. There we go, a job for anyone and of any ability. The rendered letterbox with the mosaic tile top complete with a solar light. Easily done with Easy Mix products. Thanks for watching, good luck.